Welcome to the With You Rugby podcast, designed to give you an in-depth look at the United States Rugby Foundation, including our grant programs and recipients, fundraisers, events, and much more. Now let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Vizard, president of the United States Rugby Foundation, and I want to welcome you to another of our With You Rugby podcasts. And as we get closer to the 2024 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame induction ceremony presented by Major League Rugby, which will take place at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, July 13th, we thought it'd be a great idea to get to know this year's Hall of Fame inductees and special award recipients just a bit better. And today we welcome in a former Cal player, former New York Athletic Club player, amongst many clubs he played for, and a USA Eagles 15-star and a 2024 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Lou Stanfill. Welcome, Lou.
Hey, Viz. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So where are we talking to you from? Is this your home here?
Yeah, I'm at home today. I've had a busy day, getting a lot of stuff done. So, we squeeze the most juice out of that lemon as we can every day.
All right, great, Lou. Thanks for joining us. And as we do with all our inductees and honorees, Lou, we want to learn a little bit about your childhood. Where'd you grow up? What sports you play as a kid?
So I was born and raised in Sacramento. Both of my parents were law enforcement. My dad was Sacramento County deputy, and my mother was a CHP officer. I wasn't really good at sports, and I didn't find my competitive edge probably until I was, I would say 11 or 12. But I was always involved in the sports, and my parents, the telling of the year was always about the seasons of sports, as well as the seasons as, the actual year happens. But, we played it all: football, basketball, baseball, soccer, volleyball, golf. Obviously I didn't play tackle football until I got to high school, but anything that was out there, we were involved in. And I employ that same strategy with my child. No seasons, or rather, we have seasons. You're not doing anything year round. Let's just do it all.
Great. And let's talk about your high school career at Jesuit High School in Sacramento. You're the Sacramento Defensive Player of the Year, earned all state football honors. What positions did you play?
I played tight end and outside linebacker. If I would have kept playing, I probably would have played DN. I was a little too slow to play outside linebacker, but the team needed something, and I filled in what they needed.
Cool. And you started playing rugby at Jesuit. How'd you get introduced to the sport there?
So this is a good story. So played baseball my entire life, and my father put a lot of time into our baseball. Worked on my brother and I. We had very good skills, a lot of BP, a lot of going to batting cages. Pitching coaches, the like. And after Little League, when the bases started moving back a little bit, I noticed I wasn't as good as I once was. So I wouldn't say that I didn't like baseball anymore. I just wasn't as interested as I used to be. And, coincidentally, people were trying to convince me to play rugby, as well as I may have misplaced my baseball mitt during that time frame of freshman year. And, kind of a way to avoid telling my dad that I lost my mitt, I told him I just wanted to play rugby instead. And initially he was pretty upset because of all the time we had spent in it. My mom, of course, whatever makes you happy. And then after the first game, he was sold. And my brother, who was playing baseball at the time, he said, hey, he was on the cusp of getting cut from the varsity baseball team, which Jesuit has a pretty strong program. He says, why don't you come play rugby? And, it helped us both blossom into better athletes just because of, everyone knows who plays rugby. I ask a lot of your athleticism, a lot of your thinking ability. And so it helped me improve across all sports that I played.
And the Jesuit rugby team had some success while you were there. Tell us about that.
Well, the program started probably about, I think, 2 years before I was a freshman. And the year before is when they had the incredible win over Highland High School in the national championship, and I think it was '99, and that was our first national championship victory. And it was a great environment to really learn rugby because it was a traditional rugby club. We weren't super strict about anything. Everyone showed up to practice, and everyone worked hard. And, as we step back, obviously our knowledge of rugby was pretty small. Like even the head coaches, we had, Barry O'Connell, who came from Australia. I remember this is late 90s. So, running a forward off of the ruck was pretty advanced as long as you could at least find time to hit the back. So we did it all very simply, but we did it very well. So the element of working hard on the pitch, being defensively minded because defense wins championships was something that was integrated at a very young age, starting rugby for me at Jesuit High School.
So after Jesuit, you were enrolled at Cal. We all know that Cal has a great academic and rugby tradition. Did you have football scholarships elsewhere from any other schools? Did you know at that time you're going to play rugby at Cal?
I had a shoebox full of letters from schools all over the nation, and I like football, but every Monday was the same at football. Every Tuesday, everything it got very monotonous at the end, and rugby is not monotony, right? Rugby is you don't know what you're going to get each training. So I wanted to play rugby, but I also knew if I wanted to go get a scholarship, I would need to play football. And unfortunately, I think it might have been a little bit of combination of the fact that I didn't not show interest, but people knew how much I loved rugby, and I had opportunity to go to Cal. And so how much effort were they going to spend recruiting me? And how much effort they were going to spend recruiting me if I was, not to put it so crudely, but a 6'4", 240-pound white boy that runs a 4.8 40 at his best. Right, like there was a ceiling in terms of my outside linebacker. So they'd have to convert me to a D tackle or something like that, or a really large D end. And I had an opportunity to walk on at Cal. I didn't get any scholarship offers, but obviously Cal, a fantastic program, very history. They had the ability to tag your application to make sure that your application made it through admissions, and that was more than enough for me. And even while I was at Cal, the football team came up to me and told me, "Hey, we saved a walk-on spot in case you ever are interested." But I was too much in love with rugby. It's the greatest sport on earth, and I couldn't walk away from it. I surely couldn't change my body type to go to football and then try and come back to rugby, where that body type would not have lended to my success in the long run.
Well, you had great success at Cal. While you were there, you won national championship all 5 years you were there. That must have been a special time and a special group of players.
It was. It really was. From my freshman year all the way to my fifth year, there was always a cast of characters in that on that roster that I learned a lot from. Jack Clark, very historied, very very well-renowned rugby coach. He had a very heavy focus on leadership, and I think that's something that helped to propel me forward, because his definition for leadership was super simple: make those around you better and more productive. Now, there's all sorts of other elements that you play into what makes a good leader, but when you distill it down, if you make those around you better and more productive, sometimes all you have to do is your job. If you do your own job, you will make those around you better. Head down, focus on what you have to do. And everyone really employed that. And people with higher skills, communication skills or game management skills or just a higher level of knowledge, they were always willing and able to put themselves in a position to help those around them be better and more productive. So, and it set me up for life, because leadership is the hardest thing in life to be good at. And it's the one thing you can have in any organization that will immediately make your organization better.
Mm-hmm. Now, of those 5 national championship teams, was there any one particular team that stood out in your mind?
Well, BYU, we played them 3 separate times in the national championship. I played against players such as, Alapate Tuilavuka, Salesi Sika, dudes who were men when I was in college. I was just a boy. I had a lot to learn, and going up against these guys certainly made that learning curve a little steeper. So those games were always very memorable. University of British Columbia was always a solid game. But we had a couple games where we played against the New York Athletic Club, and we got a rare victory in the very early parts of their season. Then we played on back the following year, and they had all sorts of Eagle notables, including Todd Clever on the team. My brother was actually playing on the team for that game. They got the victory. And then the next year we turned around, we beat them. So, there was a whole lot of games that, stand out, but those would be the ones that I remember on the front of my memory.
Yeah. While you were at Cal, you earned All-American honors every year of those 5 years. That had to feel pretty special for you. And there's probably not too many that can make that claim of 5, straight All-American honors.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a compliment to the coaching that we receive at Cal Berkeley. Jack Clark and Tom Billups, they know their X's and O's. They know the details and the skills to execute. And I pride myself on the ability of being humble enough to be coachable by everyone. So, and I surely was coachable by them, and they taught me very well, and I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Cool. And then you graduated from Cal in 2008. Then you relocated to New York City. What took you to the Big Apple, and how difficult an adjustment was that for you?
Well, so we played against Nyack in 06, and excuse me. And Bruce McLean reached out to me. He, says, "I gotta come. You gotta come out to New York, and we got a spot for you. It's gonna be great. We'll win ourselves a couple national championships. It'll be fun, And of course, Bruce is a legend. And I'm trying to think if I had any other opportunities, but part of me was like, just go. It's the Big Apple. I've never even been. Go live. Like, here's your opportunity. And so I just took it. And I would say there was an adjustment, but luckily I had guys like Andrew Lindsay, who was a New York stalwart, as well as a Cal and Jesuit stalwart, who was my brother's grade, who was there to kind of make sure, like, hey, we're going to get you on your feet. We're going to make sure you survive the big city, doesn't eat you alive. At the same time, we're going to go play some good rugby. And that's exactly what we did. And I look back on my club experience as being some of the most important in my life, not because I improved as a rugby player tremendously, because the quality of rugby at the club level, it's amateur. Everyone has a job. They're not going out training 4 hours a day like they would professionally. So standard's just going to be a little lower. But you're going to have to learn some life skills. You're going to have to learn how to adjust on the fly, how to make ends meet, how to cook for yourself and get adequate nutrition. So it was definitely a different scenario than when I was playing professionally overseas in Italy. And I think it was different for a lot of good reasons.
Mm-hmm. You joined the AC in 2009. You played with them through the 2012 season, which was a special one for you and the team, as the AC won the National Club Championship. You were the MVP. Tell us about some of the highlights from that 2012 season.
Well, 2012 season, I was recovering from toe surgery, which, it's kind of funny. Everyone asked, like, oh, you play all this rugby. Like, what kind of injuries you get? I saw my worst injury was a toe injury, which, people kind of like sit back like, oh, okay. All right, I wasn't expecting to hear that. But I had a chronic turf toe, which was called hallux rigidus. After I got that corrected, it helped with my mobility of my toe, which, you don't realize how important your toe flexion is until you're trying to scrum, right? And you're trying to get your knees close to the ground, and you realize, oh, man, I got to angle my foot out, or you're trying to run around the field. And, towards the end of my career, I started running way more like Frankenstein than I did like an athlete because of that. But I recovered, right, in New York, hard circumstances, right? You're living in the city, you're working 40 hours a week, you're training, you're practicing, you're trying to eat well. And then we went on to win that national championship. And that was a very special group. That group included Troy Hall, who was a U.S. Eagle, just absolute stud of a rugby player, Mike Petrie, and then a slew of guys like Alistair McFarland, who ended up playing in the 2015 Rugby World Cup, Brian Doyle, a whole bunch of guys, Connor Coyne, who really enriched my rugby experience, both on and off the field. And I'll never forget that season. And that game in Seattle was absolutely, it was a barn burner. That was a good Seattle team. Again, having to go up against Alapate Tuilaluka, right? A whole host of, Fijian 7 stars, as well as guys who I ended up being teammates with later in my career, who, ended up playing on the national team, like Matt Truville. And it was, it's just great to think about how, I wouldn't say incestuous, but how small the rugby community is in North America. Because you go from one club to another, you're really going to be playing with guys that you either known for a really long time, or you're going to continue knowing once you're done there.
And don't feel bad about that turf toe. I think my football idol, Jack Lambert, I think he had to retire because of that. So,
well, it took Patrick Willis out too. That's why he retired, because he had that toe.
Yeah, well, good company there.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Louis, you're 19 years old and at Cal when you made your debut for the Eagles against Canada in 2005. How did you get the news that you'd be in that match day squad?
Well, Well, the news about being on the team came from Tom Phillips, who was the coach at the time, and he pulled me aside at practice and let me know. And that was a pretty amazing feeling to be considered to play on the national team at such a young age. It probably ballooned my head up a little bit, which was quickly deflated on my first test match. But it was an incredible experience. I had a lot of growing up to do. I was quite young. I was quite immature. I had ability, but I didn't really have it in between my ears. And so that was a tour where I felt like I grew a lot as a man, as a young adult, and as a rugby player. It was a tremendous honor. And obviously, it was the start of something that I would forever do. And I always wanted to continue to come back more for. I, like a lot of people who were amateur rugby players, I certainly didn't do it for the money. And every year after a World Cup, I asked myself, do I want to do this again for another 4 years? Because I wasn't going to do it for another test match. I wanted to play in that World Cup because it was such a special experience. And, 3 of them. And after the third one, I knew I had my fill.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to that debut again. Were you a starter in that match? Where was the match? And what do you remember about that game?
I was a starter in that game. I started alongside James Lick, who was out of Old Blue. And then Mike Mangan was behind us. Mike Mangan was a newly rugby convert from football who didn't really understand the game, but he had a lot of heart and he had a lot of ability. And we were playing Canada and Tokyo. And obviously being in Japan for the first time, that was quite the experience. But playing against international men was a massive step up from collegiate. And so 39 minutes in, the game was going well. And I took a spot next to the ruck, kind of to block the pillar post positions, the AB defender, and with my back turned. So obviously I'm not facing them, so I'm not obstructing. And they would have to run around me. And this guy didn't care. He just shoulder charged me straight in the back, and he separated my SE joint. Right, I thought I broke my clavicle, and it was good. It was a reminder, like, don't take your back on the opposition because someone's kind of jack you up at this level. And after that, I never did that again. my seemingly cheeky move really bit me in the butt.
Yeah, well, you played 55 more games for the Eagles. You went under in 56 caps total, the 6th most in USA Rugby history over an 11-year USA Eagles career. Was there an Eagles game or two that stand out in your mind, and why?
Oh, man. Yeah, one game that really stands out is our opening match in 2007 against England. One thing I remember vividly, outside of the match, right? England was one of the favorites, and they obviously went on to play in the final, that World Cup, if I'm not mistaken. And we kept it close. I mean, it was 26-16, something like that. It was a 10-point difference. And I don't think England expected us to come out and hit and to really play defense. And we did. We were frothing at the mouth. But before the match, standing, we're kind of walking back in to get our jerseys on after the warm-up. And the crowd there, mostly English, starts singing Sweet Low, Sweet Chariot. And it starts on one side, and then another side picks up. It's like the row, row, row your boat, where you start at different points. And it opened my eyes, and that was the first taste of playing at the highest level on the biggest stage. And I knew, like, I had to keep doing this. The win against Russia in 2011, that was very special. And then kind of the tipping point for the USA when we started getting more victories over our northern neighbors, Canada. That was an era where I felt we were really starting to turn the tides in terms of, hey, like, we're getting it right now. More guys are focusing a little more on rugby, a little less on work. More guys are picking up the slack and realizing that this is not something that is just fun. This is something that, like, we are driven to do. So those matches, and then my last match in 2015 against South Africa. There's a picture online of me bawling like a baby, and the national anthem, which I'm a very, very patriotic person. I love my country, and the only thing I wish I could have done more for it is to serve in the military, which, as a almost a 40-year-old man, I think I can live without having to do that, but I wish I could have done that. And knowing that this was the last time I was going to put on the jersey, the last time I was going to sing the national anthem, and wearing the colors, it became very clear. And I played my heart out that match. I think that was the game that epitomized my career. It was a hard fight all the way to the end, and at the end of it, I was still fighting.
Mm-hmm. You played in the 2007, 2011, 2015 Rugby World Cups. Which one was your favorite and why?
Probably 2011 because the food was really good. And this is a small thing, but when you're hotel hopping and you're really stuck into it day after day, and you're moved from your family and friends and all the things that kind of not entertain you, but your hobbies, right? And you're focused so much on rugby, the food can make a huge difference. And of 07 and 15, man, the food was dreadful. I don't know what the heck they were thinking. In 11, New Zealand had it right. We were eating lamb. They were making sure we had dessert. Like we look forward to meals every day, whereas at 7-Eleven, it was like, God damn, we got to eat again. Like all you want to do is go eat out, but coach didn't want you to do that, which is understandable. So that was the one that stood out, as well as 15 was amazing too. I mean, the birthplace of rugby is England, so you have so many countries that come around that, and obviously finishing my career playing in Queen Elizabeth Stadium in London it was packed to the gills. I think it's 70,000 or something like that. That was a tremendous experience.
Now, in 2010, you played professionally with the Canberra Royals in Australia. How did that opportunity come about, and what did you enjoy most about playing in Canberra?
That opportunity came about because a good buddy of mine who I played with at the Gentlemen of Aspen, Mike Hurley, he said, mate, we're playing in this TENS tournament in Manila. We're going to pay for you to come out. He's a rugby junkie, right? Does fairly well financially. He says, hey, I'm going to pay for you to come out. You're going to play for our team. I was like, wonderful. On the team also was Joe Roth and Jeremy Paul, both former Wallabies. And so they kind of helped grease the wheels to help me get somewhere. And that was an experience that really opened my eyes about leadership. I got placed in a house with a family, wife, husband, 2 kids, I think like 12 and 9, and who have their own issues, right? And it wasn't professional. That was actually amateur. I was hoping to get an opportunity to show in front of the Wallabies, which I kind of did. I made it into their academy, but then I got my opportunity with the Italian team during that time. But that's neither here nor there. While I was there, the importance of coaching and leadership cannot be understated. And we had great talent, but our game plan was not that good. And we kept trying to do the same things over and over again and not changing. And it helped me to realize that as a rugby player, where you're from doesn't matter. It's what you say, what you employ, how you communicate, and your knowledge to the team to get a different result than you did the day before, and to get the most out of you, or the week before and the most out of your team, is of the utmost importance. And as well, playing club rugby can have its trials and tribulations. I was told they'd give me a job, something to, put some money in my pocket. I didn't get a job. I left to go on a summer tour, and, they were kind of upset with me for doing that. So it was a lot of learning, they told me they were going to get me a place to live. I ended up staying with that family for a long time, and they were very nice to me. And so again, not all of it is all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes you're going to have to grind. You're going to have to deal with some adversity. The rugby was great though. While I was out there, I played across from Roland Suniula, who was in the same area. So, and it was definitely a step up in terms of not the physicality, but maybe the verbal veracity. Australians love talking smack, and a lot of tongue-in-cheek smack. And that's when I realized, I'm either going to need to hit a lot harder, or I'm going to need to get a lot wittier because these guys won't leave me alone.
Well, from there, you went to Italy. You talked about it a little bit, played a few seasons there. How did that opportunity open up, and what did you enjoy about playing in Italy? What were some of the highlights there?
That opportunity opened up because a great teammate of mine, Paul Emmerich, a great American Eagle, he had a connection because he played in Parma for a number of years, who said, hey, I have a club that's looking for a number 8. Do you know anyone who would be willing to come over? And he put my name first and foremost, and that's how I got my first opportunity. Living in Italy was awesome. There's nothing more challenging than being transplanted into a country where you have the skills and the ability, but you don't have the communication ability. And coming from not Spanish speaking background, but I took Spanish in high school, and I was competent enough to know a lot of vocabulary, verb conjugation, as well as how to converse and structure a sentence. And Italian and Spanish were not identical, but they're very similar in both vocabulary and sentence structure and conjugation. So after about 3 weeks of having to learn all my very basic skills, I came into practice and no English, all Italian, and I'm just standing in the back of the line trying to picture what I'm going to do, and then just monkey see, monkey do. And then I look over to my buddy who speaks English and say, hey, how do I say wide? How do I say short? How do I say with you, on your left, on your right? And after about 3 weeks, after I kind of build up a decently robust vocabulary, one of the guys pulled me aside and they called me Gigi because I signed my contract Luigi Stanfillini, which they all thought was really funny. And I'm not Italian at all. And he says, hey, Gigi, why do you speak of the Italian like a Spaniard? And I was trying to use the accent and everything. And at that point, I was like, all right, whatever. I was on the field. I sounded more like a Lieutenant Aldo Raines communicating with my teammates. But again, I'm living by myself. I'm actually have money in my pockets, and all I have to do is train. I'm living like a professional. It wasn't a lot, but I'm cooking. I'm maintaining my own lifestyle. So it was my first, hey, you're an adult. You go be an adult. No one's holding your hand to make sure you get a place to live, or oh, hey, you need extra money. It's hey, you're showing up and you're either performing or you're not, and everything you do in between is gonna help you with that performance. And I think that was a really pivotal part of my career where I took a turn from being a young man to someone who wanted to be a full-grown man.
Mm-hmm. And then you came back to the States. You had some MLR stints with Seattle, Austin, and San Diego. Tell us about those experiences and what were a highlight or two from your stays with those three teams.
So my immediately after my second Italian contract, I needed a new home. I found the woman who I would eventually marry. I didn't have another contract overseas because I was playing in Serie A, and while they really appreciated me, they said, Gigi, we probably can't afford you next year. I said, that's fine. I really appreciate everything you've given me. And so Seattle was the next step. I got approached by Justin Fitzpatrick, and he said, hey, we got a good thing going on up here. We got facilities. We have a team that wants to train, and we have a good competition. And I took that, and it was good for my rugby. Again, it was a big step up to actually grow up because, again, I had to find my own place to live. I had to get a job. I had to make sure that I fed myself, and then eventually as I got longer in the tooth there, as guys were getting brought in, I would hold them up at my place. I would help them out. I'd help them get their feet underneath them. And so that was huge, as well as, we had a great cast of characters. Matt Truville played there. A number of guys who played at Central Washington who were great rugby players who never got the recognition that they deserved. And also guys who were, overseas transplants, expats who were working real jobs. And I had played against in 2012. So that was a very nice opportunity for me to work my hardest to make sure I submitted that bid for 2015. After that, I retired, right? Played in the 2015 Rugby World Cup. And I said, time to grow up. I need to go get a big boy job. I've squeezed every ounce of juice out of this lemon as I can. And it's time to do what's right. I got married. And then the first pro rugby league came in. I was doing some commentating. I didn't want to play. I wanted to focus on growing up. And then it went under. And so nothing changed for me. I was coaching. I was working as a real estate broker, and I was doing everything I can to try and grow up. And then the following year, the MLR, not following year, 2 years after that, MLR comes about. And Todd Clever was playing with Austin where he had interest. And so he was also kind of covering some positions there. And they needed someone for their last game. They needed a back rower. And so they were like, hey, we'll pay for everything. You just come down here and play. And I was like, shit. I had a rocky moment. Still had a little bit of something left in the basement. And I got that taste, and I said, you know what? I got more in me. And so then I came back and I played for San Diego in the next year. I reached out to Zach Test, who was assistant coach. I had to sell myself. No one was really knocking on my door because, everyone's got other things to do. No one's caring about a washed up mid-30s.
How old were you then?
34. I was 33, 2017. Yeah, 33, then 34 when I was playing on the Legion. And I had let my toe heal up. So, and I kept myself in good shape. I'm a believer that like what you do to become a good rugby player is important, but what you do to have a physical body that makes you have longevity is just as important. And so I maintained a physique to where if I had to step on a field, I could at least smash someone. And I reached out to Zach and I asked him, hey, do you need a second rower who can smash people? Because that's what I will do. Hey, you don't have to pay me a lot. I'll just come in on the weekends. I'll do my job. I'll come off the bench for you, and I'll make sure I have an impact, and I'll help however I can. And that turned into a fantastic way for me to kind of close the book on my rugby playing days. That 2019 season was probably the most memorable season I've ever had. Very special group of guys, from Americans to internationals. We had Patty Ryan playing tight head prop for us. We had Joe Peterson in the back line. Just an amazing cast. A bunch of Fijians that were gold medal winners in the Olympics, or guys who were up. It was a great group, and smashing people and getting in the trenches was kind of our MO. We talked about the trenches, and guys really looked up to the fact that I was working a 9 to 5. I get on a plane, I fly down, maybe I get a captain's run in, and then I go out and I would just smash people. That's all you got to do. Go out and tackle. And I would do that day in and day out. And that team ended up doing really well. We didn't win the championship in the end, which was kind of very bittersweet, but that's just the way rugby goes. And I wouldn't trade that season for anything. And I ended up playing the 2020 season that ended up being cut by COVID, which was a shame. But again, just sometimes the way the cookie crumbles.
So you played second row, flanker, and number 8 throughout your career, right?
Yes, that's right.
What was your percentage of tests? Was mostly at second row, and what was your favorite of those 3 positions?
I always loved number 8. I love nothing. I mean, Viz, I love nothing more than a left-handed scrum where you have a good tight head prop who's going to get you that shoulder, and then you just look at that number 10 and think, I'm going to ruin your day. I did that one time against Canada in 2000. I want to say 9, where I got a chance at the end of the game, and I put number 10 out of the game. I hit him so hard with the ball in my hand, and it was the best feeling in the world. And of all the positions, I love playing number 8 the most. Granted, your position is only dictated upon the scrum, and after that, it doesn't matter. But the back of the scrum, when you get that ball and you're able to truck that number, oh, man, there was no better feeling in the world.
You're preaching to the choir here, brother. Now, Louis, amid your playing career and personal life, you found time to coach your old high school team. How rewarding was that? And the team had some success while you're coaching there, right?
Yes, yeah, it was incredibly rewarding. Even part of me still believes this, even though my position in terms of my capacity has changed. But I've lived a life of rugby, building a skill set and a knowledge and relationships, and to just step away from the game and to focus on my family, while that's convenient, that is not the right thing to do. My heart is too much into it. I love the sport too much. I had to coach. And of course, it's easy to go coach at Jesuit High School because you have a solid group of young men who come from typically good backgrounds. Not that that's here nor there, but when kids don't show up to practice, that makes it hard to practice. And everyone showed up to practice. We were 5 days a week. We were serious about it. And the kids looked at me and they knew, like, I'm cut from the same cloth. Like, these are a bunch of knuckleheads, a bunch of knuckle draggers. And that's exactly what I was. And so when I would speak to them, it wasn't like they would look at me thinking like, oh, this old, like, it was like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. And when he speaks to me, he's speaking to me out of love and not out of, putting me down. And I loved it. I helped coach players like Max Schumacher, who's currently playing in the MLR, Christian Dyer, who's on a national team, Joel Marchant, who hopefully comes back into the fold and plays professional rugby in MLR because he's an absolute stud of a tight head prop, and he could play anywhere in the front row if he wanted to. And also to coach alongside John Shorey and Andrew Acosta. John Shorey was the head coach when I was playing there. I owe him a lot. I owe him almost everything. I wouldn't love rugby as much as I do if it wasn't for John Shorey. And he has given me a lot of opportunities in life, and I will never be able to fully repay him. So being able to come back and help him with that, if that's what he feels I need to do to repay my debt to him, then I'm happy to do that. Unfortunately, now that I have 3 children, it's a little hard to be committed to something like that without without being financially rewarded to make up for your time. And it's a volunteer position at Jesuit. And so now my youngest, he plays, and I coach him here in Sacramento, playing U8s, and couldn't be happier.
Louis, in 2020, while training to become a firefighter, you were diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Tell us about receiving that news, your battle to overcome it, and where you stand now.
So, I struggled in terms of finding my career. Like I said, I was a real estate broker for commercial real estate for a couple of years, and realized, man, I'm a terrible businessman. This is not the job for me. And then I was the executive director for Rugby NorCal, which was great. But as I step back and I think about where am I going to be in 30 years, I'm not going to have retirement. Who knows? I'll be making the same amount my entire life. I needed somewhere. I need to be part of an organization. I need to do something that was more than myself, excuse me. And both my parents were cops. I always wanted to be a cop ever since I was a little boy, but it was not the time to be a cop. Cops were getting shot up left, right, and center, and the public were not. It was not a position where people were appreciative for law enforcement, and not that should have steered me away, but I felt my skills were more apt to help people than it would to be detain someone. And that's why I decided to look at the fire department. And in the middle of that, I had a mole removed from my head. And during the pre-op, because I thought maybe the mole was cancerous, and my barber kept, scraping it with the comb. So I thought, you just get rid of this. I'm not playing rugby anymore. I'll have to let this heal. And the ear, nose, and throat doctor noticed a lump on my neck and says, hey, you should let me biopsy that to take a look. And I put it off, and I finally did it after I got turned down from Alameda County Fire Department, which was my dream department at the time. And I continued interviewing, and then I interviewed with Sac City, another dream department, and they said, thank you, but no thank you. And then I got the news. And so, keep piling, shitty news on top of shitty news. I can cuss on here, can I? Sorry, but that was a pretty bad time. I wasn't feeling too good about myself. The initial news was extremely hard to take. But the diagnosis was far more dramatic than either the treatment or the recovery. And the treatment was hard. I mean, don't get me wrong. Anyone who's had cancer knows that chemo's not fun. Radiation isn't fun. But that news, when you think about life and death and what have I done and what am I leaving, that was, it gave me a lot to think about. And it didn't force me, but it made me find my faith again. And 2 weeks after I got the diagnosis, I got a call from Sac City, and they said, hey, someone dropped out of our process. Would you like to be a part of the incoming cohort of recruits? And I looked at my wife, and she looked at me and said, well, looks like you're gonna have to man up and beat cancer while you're going through the fire academy. And that's exactly what I did. And I wouldn't have done it any different. I think when I think about opportunities, again, that made me into a man, that 100% was one of the things where I realized if I do this, right, this is what, I can do anything. And the fire service was 100% the way to go. When we think about playing on the national team or any team, you don't wear, that jersey isn't yours. You fill the jersey, you take care of it, you serve the jersey. And as a firefighter, you serve the community. You are out as the service. You're there to help everyone else. You're not the centerpiece. And that has really been very beneficial to me understanding my place in this world and how to treat people and how I can be a better leader.
Mm-hmm. And you had a big test today, right? I
did, yeah. Well, I'm studying to become a paramedic. So again, I wanted a higher scope of practice. I want to be able to push medication, start IVs, intubate, really make a difference in whether or not someone lives or dies. Because as an EMT, you can do compressions and you can give oxygen. And drive the ambulance. As a paramedic, you can really make a difference in someone's life or death scenario outcome. And so, yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to become a paramedic. That way I can earn a higher scope of practice, and that way I can better serve my community and my department.
And you took one step closer. You passed the test today.
I passed my test today.
Congratulations, buddy. That's
great. Thanks, Viz. Thank you.
Now, Louis, you had a long career in rugby, taking you all over the world. Of all your rugby tours, Eagles or otherwise, what was your favorite tour, and what about that tour made it your favorite?
I would say the workup, like the summer of 2011. The workup prior to the 2011 World Cup and the 2011 World Cup, that was one of my favorite times in my life. I was playing pretty good rugby then. I was still in the back row. And, there's groups of guys in that team that we're still in constant contact. We speak almost every day. Guys like John Vandergiesen, Chris Biller, Chris Wiles, Todd Clever, Tim Usaz, Mike McDonald. These are guys who Hayden Smith, like I'll be lifelong friends with. And, all the time I got to spend with them, it was, I will never forget it. And on top of that, we won some rugby games. We represented our nation's colors with pride, and we were all in it. We were all in. There was nothing else we wanted to do. And so I will never forget that year. And that's one that really sticks in my mind for one of the best tours best points in my rugby playing career that I've ever had. And, prior to that, I was playing in Italy, so it all kind of tacks together. Any one tour is pretty hard, though. You know that.
Right. Sure. Now, of all your rugby memories and accomplishments, is there one or two that stand above the rest?
Yeah. Earning my 50th cap. That was pretty huge. And I think earning my first cap. Those stood out to me greatly. And then I think ultimately is that my last cap. All of those, I think of all three of those games as moments in my life that all the things that I worked hard to do were for those moments. The first time you get a chance to wear the jersey, and then the 50th being kind of a big milestone, especially in American rugby at that time, because we were playing maybe 4 tests a year if you're lucky.
Who's the 50th against, and where was that?
It was against Romania and Bucharest, and we got the victory. It was awesome.
Did they let you go out by yourself at the beginning of the game? How'd that all work?
I think I did lead the game, but lead the team out. But it wasn't. Todd Clever, he was the captain, and it was in Bucharest, and Romania was. Love all my international teammates, in terms of my brethren, but they were some of the dirtiest players, and we were in Bucharest. So I remember at one point, they run forwards off the pod. I'm there, boom, I make the tackle. As I'm getting up, the guy who was running the ball, he gets up before me, shoves me down the ground, and the referee's starting to run past. Before I can even get up, someone else just comes by and just knees the crap out of me in front of the referee, and I'm looking at him, and he just goes on his merry way. It was one of those things where you're going to take a few licks, and you weren't going to get any help from anywhere else. And again, those build character.
And your last one, your 56, was that South Africa? You said?
Yeah, that was South Africa.
The World Cup.
Yep. Okay. And that was a very good team, and they didn't have the best game plan. I don't know if you remember that 2015 World Cup. Watching them play was kind of rough because it was a very simple game plan. It was very, it felt like mid-90s rugby where, take the forwards and just keep pounding, not a lot of razzle-dazzle, not a lot of kicking. And so it was a very forward-heavy game, which is obviously right into my wheelhouse. So, those guys, I'm trying to think if I played 80. I think I did play 80 that game. And, that was one of the things that I always felt that I prided myself on was my fitness and my ability to go the full distance.
And looking back on your career, what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of my commitment to the game, my commitment to the jersey, my commitment to my country, my commitment to my teammates. because those are things that no one will ever take away. You know, my performances, they were good sometimes, they were bad sometimes. You know, I did a number of things where I'm sure people were watching the game, they would think, what the hell is he thinking? Right. But my commitment never wavered. And that's something that I will always stand on as a strength of mine. If I'm committed, my loyalty will not go away. And that has helped me to be a good employee. That's helped me to be a good husband and to be a good father. And those are the things that are most important to me now. And so I'll take those with me no matter where I go. And I'm thankful to God for the opportunity to be able to do such.
And Lou, one final question. What does it mean being selected as one of this year's Hall of Fame inductees?
It means earning the respect of your peers at the highest level, and to be recognized by guys like yourself, many men who went before me, who were all the same things as I find myself prideful of: tough, hard rugby men who were there for the jersey and there for their teammates. And they recognize you as someone who is worthy of recognition. And that in itself is more humbling than I can really put into words. And I can't appreciate the consideration, let alone the actual award, enough. So Viz, for all that you do, thank you very much. Obviously, things like this probably wouldn't happen if it weren't for men like you who continue to carry the torch and to care so much about American rugby, to continue it moving forward and to build legacy. So thank you.
Thank you, Louis, and thank you for all you've done for the game, especially here in America. Congratulations on a great career, and I look forward to shaking your hand in a couple of weeks in D.C. and welcoming you into the Hall.
I'm looking forward to it, Viz.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for this edition of our With You Rugby podcast. On behalf of the U.S. Rugby Foundation, I want to thank Lou Stanfill for joining us today. Great interview. And for more information about the U.S. Rugby Foundation, go to our homepage at usrugbyfoundation.org. And for more information about the U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame induction ceremony, please look on our website and go to Hall of Fame up in the right-hand corner. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.